Hey everyone, this is Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and in this episode of Python 3 Crash Course, we're going to start taking a look at some of the modules that we can use inside of Python. So one of the things we like to do with Python a lot of times is data visualization, and this generally means plotting. Now, there's a lot of great plotting tools out there, but some of them cost a lot of money. So say MATLAB, right? So you have to buy if you're a company, you have to buy an enterprise license to MATLAB. If you're a student, you have to buy the student license of MATLAB, which can be pretty pricey, especially with all the toolkits. But Matplotlib provides, an open source, way of, plotting things in a similar vein as you can in MATLAB. So let's go ahead and look at an example today, and we'll look at how to, do some basic plotting. So we're going to look at pyplotbasics.py. So there's a lot of things commented out here, but we'll go through these one by one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import another module, and there's really no way of starting with Matplotlib without also talking a little bit about Numpy. So Numpy has a lot of convenience features, such as automatically creating arrays and doing mathematical operations. So for our case here, we'll be using it for one thing in particular, but it's just another library that has some convenient tools in it, and we'll probably go over this a lot more as we continue on. So the next thing we need to do is we of course need to import Matplotlib. So what we really want from Matplotlib though is this thing called Pyplot, and that's really where the plotting part of Matplotlib is. So we'll go ahead and import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT, and we'll just shorten it as PLT. Okay, so here's that part of Numpy that we're going to use. So the first thing we'll use with Numpy is this thing called Linspace. So Linspace, of this format, it says, okay, I want, a Numpy array, and you can think of an array as a lot like a list, except when we do some operations with it, it's actually more convenient than a list. So, here we have, this just says I want to make a Numpy array. I want you to generate numbers for me, equally spaced between 0 and 2, and I want you to generate 100 of those numbers. So it basically wants, this is saying give me 100 numbers from starting at point 0 and ending at point 2. So let's go ahead and just, try this out to visualize it a little more. So Python3, Pyplot basics. So here we have it. We've got 100 different numbers here, equally spaced between 0 and 2. So that's all we're doing there. And this looks like a list, but this is actually, we can actually do the type of X, and so we'll see that it's not actually a list type. It's a Numpy array. So just something that we should watch out for. Right, so as we can see, numpy.nd array. Okay, so that's how we generate our data we want to plot. So what we're going to do first, now that we have our data, is we need a figure, right? So we'll go ahead and create a figure, right? And that's going to be this plt.figure, and this just creates a blank figure for us. And we can show the figure if we want, so we can do plt.show, but we won't see anything interesting. So let's go ahead and run this. And you see it just pops up an empty figure, white screen, nothing special. Another interesting thing to note, or something that you should note, is that this actually pauses the program, so the program isn't running in the background. So if you put a plt.show, you have to make, or if you want this just run in the background, you shouldn't put things in like plt.show. Or you should make sure that this figure closes somehow, right? And then when we close, the program continues on. Okay, so now that we have a blank figure, we need to start adding stuff to the figure. So we'll go ahead and print three things here. We'll print a linear function, a quadratic function, and a cubic function. And so here what we'll do is we'll specify using plt.plot, and this says I want to plot something, and then we'll pass it coordinates on the x-axis, and then we'll pass it coordinates on the y-axis, and these will be coordinate pairs, right? So in this case, they're both x, which both have 100 elements in the Numpy array. So we have, for every 100 elements of x, we have 100 elements of y. So over here, So what's this going to do? So this is going to plot out 100 different points, starting at 0, 0, ending at 2, 2, and we'll create a label for this called linear, and we'll do that when we actually print out a legend. We need to when we print out a legend, we need this label to say what it is and correspond it to a color, because this will automatically these won't all print as the same color. It'll do its best to find different colors to print this with. So then the next thing we can do, because this is a Numpy array and not a list, we can do mathematical operations on it, and instead of just say repeating a list, this will actually raise every element of the list to the second power, and likewise to the third power. So at this point we have 3 things plotted, so we can actually just show this, right? So we'll do plt.show, oops, and we'll go ahead and run this again. And so now you see we've got our 3 lines, right? And automatically we get these X and Y axes. If we wanted to say, shrink these or change the delimiter, we can do that as well, but we'll leave that to a later episode. We'll just show off the basics of plotting. But as you can see, we've got our linear function, we have our quadratic function, and we have our cubic function. So this is kind of what we expect. Okay, so then what else do we have? So it's always good when we plot something to have a title. So we can have, plt.title, and this will just add a title to our plot. So let's go ahead and show this as well. And we'll run it again. And so now we've got a nice title that just says simple plot. And you see there's other things we can do. We can pan around. We can actually zoom to a specific spot if we want to. We can go back to a previous view, and we can also save the figure. Now in later videos we'll show that we can just save this automatically from inside of our Python script. We don't have to manually click and save it to a specific location. We can automate that as well, but for this example we'll just show off the plotting. Okay, so the only thing we're really missing at this point is a legend, right? So we need to be able to tell the different plots apart, and that's what this plt.legend is. So we'll go ahead and uncomment this last plt.show, and we'll run our script again. Okay, so there we have it. So we've got our if we zoom in up here, you can't zoom in on the legend itself, but we've got the legend up at the very top that says linear, quadratic, and cubic, and those correspond to the labels we did when we plotted the data. So when we just plot it normally, it will give us, a solid line. So we'll kind of interpolate between the points, and it'll just kind of connect the dots for us. If we wanted to, we can also change this. So we can make these dashed lines, or we could just have it kind of as a scatter plot, right? And just plot the individual points as well. But we'll leave those to later videos when we do some more complex things, such as doing multiple plots on one figure. Having different labels on here. We don't just have to have a specific point and or a line that's kind of interpolated between. We can actually have both, but we'll show those off at another time. So that's going to do it for today. That's the basics of plotting with MATLAB. So let's kind of recap everything. So we imported Numpy and matplotlib.pyplot. Then we used Numpy to go ahead and create some data for us. In this case, it was 100 data points between, say x equals 0 and x equals 2 that were equally spaced. And we went ahead and printed that out. And then we showed that, when we do, we can assign, a blank figure to this fig right here. And we'll just call this plt.figure. We can use this later on to do specific things relating to figure objects, but this is just showing that you can assign these things to a variable. Then we showed how to plot some basic data using x, y coordinates, and how with our Numpy array we can actually do some mathematical operations on it, and we can say add, subtract, multiply, divide, raise to a power, and why we need this label equals some label here if we want to have a nice legend. Show that we can add a simple title using just plt.title, and then of course plt.show is what actually brings that figure to the forefront so we can actually prints that figure out so we can actually get a look at it. And later on we'll show that from right now it seems like, okay, well, what if I wanted to have two figures? This all just seems to plot on a single a single image, right? And so we'll show how we can go ahead and plot multiple figures, but we'll leave it there for this time. If you go to github.com/coffeebeforearch and you go to Python 3 crash course, that's where we have all the other videos, links to all the other videos, as well as links to the files associated with those videos. Go ahead and check that out. And if you have anything specific that you'd like to learn using Python, feel free to let me know. I've got my email here in the README, coffeebeforearch@gmail.com. But other than that, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and I hope you have a nice day.